So now we've reached our final session of this very special summit on the rockstar companies of the future, the online to offline world. And I'm really pleased to now bring on two very special leaders. They're both visionaries. They've both looked into the future and seen something that needed to be built and then gone out and built them themselves. They're serial entrepreneurs. Please help me welcome the co-founder and director Flutterwave and the founder of Andela, Iyinoluwa Aboyeji, and the founder of Sprinklr, Ragy Thomas. Welcome. Nice to see you. Thank you very much. Come on down. Nice to see you. So we've heard a lot about the online to offline world. We've heard about e-commerce. We've heard about mobility. You guys are doing something different. In fact, you're both doing very different things, but what you do have in common is that you set out to build something from scratch because the present didn't offer what people needed. Now, I know you're no longer involved in the day-to-day running of Andela or Flutterwave, but Andela really pioneered this idea that we needed local developers within Africa to serve, in fact, international companies, but also African companies. I wonder why you and your co-founders set out to create it.
Absolutely. Although I'm now technically retired from Andela and Flutterwave, the companies I built, what we had seen in the very early days of Andela was that we lived in a world where talent was equally distributed around the world, but opportunity was not. And if you look 50 years into the future, we're walking into a future where more than half of the world's working population is going to live in Africa. And so what we saw was an opportunity to really define what that talent will do. Because the reality of the situation is, if we can't find ways to productively engage that talent, we risk a world that is going to be very dangerous and unstable. And so that's what we set out to build with Andela, essentially finding the most talented young Africans, of which there are many in Africa, who are being undiscovered and probably doing less impactful things, putting them through a designed training program where we paid them to learn how to build software and essentially shepherding them into well-paying, exemplary jobs at global companies, over 200 of them now around the world. And the impact has been incredible.
They stay in
They work.
local.
They work. The beautiful thing is, because these are internet jobs, they work out of Lagos, Nigeria, and they can serve companies all over the world. And the impact has just been incredible. I remember some of the first developers we recruited back in 2014. They came to us. They were earning roughly about $100 every quarter. And by the time they graduated from our program, 4 years later, quite a number of them were earning $100,000 a year. So you can imagine the income multiplication that is possible and how that continues to contribute to stability, both in the country and in the region.
So, Ragy, you're a serial entrepreneur 4 times over. You built and sold Bigfoot Interactive, which was an email marketing company, and you're now building the tech unicorn Sprinklr. But you're setting out to build something that you don't think exists yet. And you talk about being driven by something that's, where you're going. Say more about that, and say about what you mean when you talk about really including everyone in the customer experience.
Well, so Sprinklr is a customer experience management platform for large businesses and governments. It's based on a very simple idea that what we have today that powers your front office, your customer-facing functions, is inadequate for the world that has already changed. So today you have the notion of customer relationship management, CRM, which is basically a system of record to store your customer data. And our thesis is that the CRM systems that exist today was built for the traditional customer. But today's customers, or the modern customer, is very different. And they're different because people are connected to each other. 3.8 billion people are connected to each other today. Half of
That's
this
extraordinary.
universe is connected to each other. And in most cases, with their real identity. And that has shifted the power from the brand or the company or the government, if you're a government, to the customer or the citizen. And the rules of engagement have to change. So we have this notion of an operating system for your customer-facing functions, something that you can deploy in marketing and advertising and research and commerce and customer care that connects all of these different teams together and allow you to reach and engage and listen to the modern customer. And that's the basic idea behind Sprinklr. And what we do is allow you to do all of that across 23 social media channels, 11 messaging channels, chat, and pretty much all ways to communicate in this modern world.
So tell me a couple of stories about happy customers because they've been listening to things that they didn't actually realize were even happening yet.
Yeah, so what a lot of people don't realize is that the data that you tend to have about your customers in your CRM systems, it's very limited. Like if you look me up in a CRM system, you can see that I bought something from you. You can see that maybe I called the customer care center twice, but you don't see who I am as a person. And thanks to blogs and forums and social media and Twitter and YouTube, people are putting so much information out there. So you can spend 30 seconds online, you can find out where I live, you can find out who I'm married to, you can find out who my kids are, you can find every job I've ever had, you can see what conferences I go to, you can see what I'm reading. I mean, you know so much about me. You can find out who I voted for if you use AI and go through my posts. That data is not being used. I call it the CXM data, as opposed to the CRM data that you have.
That's the customer experience.
Exactly. But that data is unstructured. It's in 90 languages, it's text, it's photos, it's videos. And you need a completely different technology stack to understand that, to read the pictures, read the language, understand the sentiment, map it to a product, map it to a concern, and then be able to get the insights to drive your business. I'll give you one good example. So McDonald's is a customer of ours, and I'm sure everyone here is familiar with McDonald's. And you know, a few years ago, one of the top challenges that they wanted to solve was to shift the public perception that they are a fast food company that's not super healthy. And same-store sales was going down, stock price was going down 14 quarters in a row. And they were trying to figure out what the company had to do to change the perception and drive revenue back up. So what would you do to understand what customers want? You know, like everyone else, they ran focus groups. And the insight from the focus group exercise was that, hey, we should get into healthy food. So they tried to sell salads. And people weren't going to McDonald's to eat salad.
McDonald's salad personally.
So that didn't work out. And so what they started doing was looking at CXM data inside Sprinklr, looking at opportunities to serve their customers better. And what they realized was people were looking for breakfast after breakfast hours. So it's 1 a.m. in the morning and you're like going home after a party and you want to have breakfast, you want to have the muffins and the pancakes, or you show up at like 12 o'clock and you don't want a heavy lunch and you want to have like something light. And they found tens of thousands of customers talking about it, and they came up with the idea of all-day breakfast, which was a product that they launched. And interestingly, they launched it by communicating to these people one-on-one on social media and messaging using Sprinklr. And so that was launched on social media. The idea came by listening to what people wanted, and it was one of the biggest successes in their history, reversed 14 quarters of decline and the multi-billion-dollar payout.
So you heard it here. We have the all-day breakfast at McDonald's, thanks to Ragy. So
Not really,
I want you to tell me, there's been a lot of, we always talk about the good stuff in technology. We always talk about the success stories and it's going so well, but you've actually got a strong message for the audience in terms of what you'd like them to do. Because for investors, moving into Nigeria, people see it as a fantastic market, but the Nigerian market isn't always necessarily super friendly towards these people who you're training. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest challenges that we face on the ground, particularly as we look to scale the successes that the tech industry has sustained so far, is the fact that, oftentimes there's a huge emphasis when people are looking to invest in countries like Nigeria on oil, on infrastructure. And the reality is that when you actually look at the data, right, the country is 50% services. The fastest growing and the largest portion of the economy is ICT. So it's very different from the picture that's often painted when people, or when the Nigerian government itself goes to pitch itself on global missions. And what is at the heart of that transformation over the last 20 years, as we've seen it, is human capital. And unfortunately, the government hasn't paid a lot of attention to human capital. Just haven't been that engagement in terms of resourcing the university system. And also in the tech industry, and I say this, the sense of humility, we've gone as an industry from pretty much zero just over 10 years ago. We're now a $2 billion ecosystem in Nigeria alone. This is just high tech, high growth, high tech. And it's not a lot, and it could probably grow a lot more. But when you face barriers, for example, in our country, for example, we have an interesting problem that we're dealing with right now, where if you have a laptop or you have a phone, you're basically shaken down by security forces or by the police. And you're not an activist, you're not, you're just a technology person.
Down for having a phone
shaken for having a phone or a laptop on the street. So I think when investors are coming and having conversations with our government, one of the things that I'm definitely asking more investors to pay more attention to is to extract commitments to nurture the human capital. Because as somebody who's played a role in developing that human capital, what we're seeing happen because of this lack of commitment to nurturing the human capital and protecting it at a very basic level is that we invest in the human capital, but then as soon as the human capital has the skills, they leave. Now, when they leave, they're going to Canada, they're going to Dubai, they're going elsewhere, and that seems like a good thing in the short run, but in the long run, the cost of talent rises, and it makes it even more expensive to be able to deploy human capital to return investment. So I think that's the biggest thing for investors, like extract a commitment from our governments to nurture human capital, because that's really what's going to deliver the return.
We're out of time. Very quickly, I'd like you to tell me where you think you're going to be in 2 years' time.
Well, we obviously are going to be bigger and growing. But what I'm excited about the future in 2 years from now, the way I think about success is if you hear the word happier, not happy, but happier, and you think of Sprinklr, and that's what we do. We enable organizations to make their customers, or if you're a government, your citizens happier. And we do that by enabling them to listen to customers and citizens, learn about what matters to them, and manifest and care for the customers and show them that you love them as a brand or as an organization.
What about you, E? Where do you want to be in 2 years' time?
I think we want to see our first unicorn out of Africa in the next 2 years. And we have a lot of very good companies and founders that are basically working towards that goal. And, my hope is that some of the investors in this room will come along for the ride. It's an incredible opportunity with the talent in Africa, and we can make it happen.
All right. Can I get you guys to thank my last two panelists, Ragy and E? Thank you very much.